ladies and gentlemen, this is our Ecolicious report, and this is the guidance to complete question or activity 6 as part of our report. And doing that will help us complete these goals, and hopefully whoever you are doing this part of the task, you're happy about it because it gives you a chance to contribute and help your team. All right, task 6 is, does the evidence support or reject hypothesis 1 or 2? Share your thinking. So you have to decide, does the evidence support hypothesis 1? Well, this is what we have to ask. So let's go down to page 3 where we get a little help. And on page 3 for activity 6, it says, if your hypothesis claimed the independent variable would harm the plant, did the data support or reject this claim? So let's look at our original hypothesis 1 and find out, were we saying it helped, would have no effect, or would it harm the plant? Or would it help it, right? So we want to find out, what was the effect that we claimed the brown water would have? So going up to the very top, we have our very first hypothesis. It says hypothesis 1, our independent variable will impact the EcoCup by helping them grow. So according to this, we claim that brown water will help the plants grow. In this example, we're calling the independent variable brown water. And we're going to reduce independent variable down to IV to save space. We're just going to call it the IV for independent variable. Okay? So our brown water will impact the EcoCups by helping the plants grow. So let's look at the data. Let's see what it says. So did it help the plants grow? EcoCups 1 and EcoCups 2 both received brown water. EcoCup 3 did not. EcoCup 1 received brown water and did not grow any better than the cup that didn't receive it. However, EcoCup 2 did. EcoCup 2 is 5 centimeters taller on average than the cup that did not receive it. We can look at this in a different way. We can look at the graph we have, which you will have for your own team. Your team will have a graph also, right? So when we look at the general growth over 7 days, there's not really much difference. The EcoCup 1 that got brown water, the EcoCup 2, both are experimental cups, right? They both received brown water. But from day 1 to day 7, their growth generally ends in the same story. There doesn't really appear to be much difference between the cups that receive brown water and the cup that receive none, our control cup. Remember, our control cup is the X's, the red X's. But on day 8, our final measurement, I have found that EcoCup 2 was a little taller on average. Their average height is 30 centimeters, 5 centimeters taller than the 2 other cups. So it's hard to say if brown water does help the plants grow, because we have one plant that received some and it didn't grow any better than the control cup that had normal water. But because EcoCup 2 does seem to be taller, we have an example of maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And I'm going to go ahead and answer activity question 6 based on the fact that we kind of have mixed results, okay? So let's go to question 6. So for hypothesis 1, does the evidence support it? EcoCup 1 rejects hypothesis 1, while EcoCup 2 supports. I'm going to put H1 to save space, right? And I'm going to change hypothesis 1 to H1 to save space. So EcoCup 1 rejects H1. So our first hypothesis said it would help them, but EcoCup 1 didn't grow any better, so that hypothesis has to be rejected for EcoCup 1. EcoCup 2 supports H1. Let's explain right. So we can look at the graph and see that EcoCup 2 does in fact grow better than plants that just receive normal water. The data also shows this. EcoCup 2 on the final day does, although every other day it didn't. So we're going to add a little more details. So EcoCup 2 supports H1 based on final day average plant growth. The evidence for EcoCup 2 supporting hypothesis 1, so the evidence that we got from EcoCup 2 supporting hypothesis 1 is a little weak because the plants in EcoCup 2 didn't grow much better, but the final day 8 reveals they may have been helped by the brown water. So there you go. We say that EcoCup 1 goes against our hypothesis 1, and EcoCup 2 supports what we expected with our hypothesis 1. We add a little more detail after that also. We said that the evidence we got from EcoCup 2 does support hypothesis 1, but it's a little weak because mostly over the first 7 days it didn't grow much better. But the final day 8 reveals that the plants may have been helped by the brown water. So, our first hypothesis said that they will impact the EcoCup by helping them grow. But because there isn't much difference in growth, I don't think there's strong support for it. I just think it supports it, but not strongly. So we won't call it, I'm going to change this. We'll say it supports H1 for the first hypothesis, but just not strongly. And that's because the plants in EcoCup didn't grow much better, but the final day 8, they were a little higher, right? All right, so let's look at hypothesis 2. It says, I'm confident that brown water will function as an abiotic variable by causing plants to get harmed or injured and not grow or survive as well as the plants with normal water. So it basically, hypothesis 2 is saying the opposite of hypothesis 1. Hypothesis 2 says that brown water is going to harm and prevent the plants from growing as well. So we have to decide, is this hypothesis supported with the evidence or not? So what we can do, if we wanted to remind ourselves, it's the question down here on page 3, we get help for number 6, right? It says, if your hypothesis claimed, so right here, this is the one for hypothesis 2 we should look at. It says, if your hypothesis claimed the independent variable would harm the plant, did the data support or reject this claim? So we got to go to the data. The data shows that the plants did as well or potentially better with the brown water. So it appears that the brown water doesn't hurt plant growth. It appears generally that either brown water doesn't have an effect or it might help a little. So we have to reject hypothesis 2. So let's go back up to our response here. And you can put the data rejects or contradicts H2 or hypothesis 2. We'll say hypothesis 2 claimed the brown water, that's the independent variable, so it claimed the brown water would harm plant growth, but the evidence shows that both EcoCup 1 and 2 grew the same or slightly better with the brown water applied. There we go. So we said EcoCup 1 was rejected hypothesis 1. We said EcoCup 2 supports hypothesis 1. We also said the data rejects or contradicts hypothesis 2. And that, dear friends, is how we use evidence to determine if either hypothesis was supported or rejected. And I went ahead and I used page 3's ideas right here to try to think through it and to try to wrap my brain around how to use the data. And to decide, I used our spreadsheet data and I also used the graph data. So you have to look at the graph or the spreadsheet to really understand if the hypothesis is rejected or supported. You got to use the data in the graph or the data in the spreadsheet to be able to answer this question. All right, good luck, and you're well on your way to being a scientist.